Morning, everyone. We're going to get started. Thank you all. Oops, can you see my slides? There we go. Thank you all so much for coming today. I'd like to really warmly welcome you to this session today. We are here in partnership with LGBT Health and Wellbeing and the Mental Health Foundation to launch our report into the evaluation of the See Me Proud Community Champions model. This is one of our sort of several series of anti-stigma sessions here at See Me. And my name's Anna Cook. I am one of the project officers with the Communities and Priority Groups team here at See Me. For those of you who don't know us, we are the national programme to tackle mental health stigma and discrimination across Scotland. We have a vision of a fairer, more inclusive Scotland that is free from mental health stigma and discrimination. And we have recently, in the past sort of 3 years or so, done quite a lot of work to move away from a universal approach, and we are increasingly intersectional in our approach. We recognise that the universal approach didn't reach or include many groups or communities, and we've been developing an alternative frame to redress this injustice. The session today, we are going to be looking at the work of See Me Proud and launching the MHF-led evaluation into the partnership. We're going to be discussing the Community Champions model, the sort of challenges and enablers of the work more generally. And we're also going to hear from two of our amazing community champions, See Me Proud champions, around the impacts of the work and also some of the work that they carried out themselves as well. We'll be using our strengths-based model to draw out themes such as community building, solidarity, and the power of lived experience as well. We're going to hear from Dr. Bridie Rudd from MHF. We've got Grant Aitchison from LGBT Health and Wellbeing, and Abby and Rose are See Me Proud champions, as I mentioned. And I'll talk you through a little bit of our sort of intersectional approach at See Me and a little bit about the background to the partnership as well. Please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat if you've got access to the chat function. We would kindly ask folks to just keep your microphones off just during the presentation section of this morning. We will be having breakout rooms at the end of the session, so it would be lovely to hear from you all and have your thoughts then as well. But please feel free to put any discussion points into the chat as well. We've got Anna De Silva. If you can raise your hand, I can't see anybody, so I'm just assuming Anna's going to give a little wave, who is monitoring the chat, and any tech issues you can contact Anna as well. And we've also got Maeve Grindle from See Me as well, who's in charge of safeguarding today. So if anybody needs a private chat, please feel free to contact Maeve and she can arrange to speak to you in a breakout room as well. So hopefully you've had a chance to look through some of the Safer Spaces information that we sent out yesterday as part of our preamble to the session. Just to highlight from our Safer Space Agreement slide that we've got here, we do have a content warning on today, and that's mostly around descriptions of stigma and discrimination experiences. However, we are using a strengths-based approach today, so we won't be dwelling too much on traumatic experiences. But I would also just sort of invite everybody to keep ourselves safe as part of today. We really honour the sharing of lived experience, but I really want to emphasise that there's no obligation to share any lived experience as part of today's session as well. As part of our Safer Spaces Agreement, we also talk about language, because we know that language can be used as a tool around stigma as well. It can really reinforce norms and stereotypes and sort of bolster prejudice. But we also recognise that language can be reclaimed by marginalised communities as well. So the partnership with See Me Proud with LGBT Health and Wellbeing began in 2017. And it's played a really sort of big part in our move towards an intersectional approach here at See Me. It's been quite a foundational partnership around that work. I'd like to direct you at this point to a previous anti-stigma session that was carried out, I think in August, if I can remember back that far. And we can pop a link to that into the chat just now. And that really delves in much more detail into what our intersectional approach is like here at See Me and some of the sort of tools and approaches that we use around this. What I'm providing is a very whistle-stop tour, so I appreciate it is a very sort of brief glimpse into it around some of the definitions more than anything as part of this. So the term intersectionality was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw, who you can see in this photograph here. She is an American legal scholar, but it's also got really deep roots in Black feminism and critical race studies. So we can see it as a lens to really see...
I've actually managed to get on the webinar.
we can see it as a lens through which we can seek to understand the complex nature of identity, health, social relationships, and power that plays out within human interaction and experiences. Sometimes I think when we talk about intersectionality, it can sort of look just at identity, but really we wanted to highlight these other parts that play out and really think about power as well. And a key part of it is who has access to power and who is kept further away from power, and what are the mechanisms that enact that as well. So as part of our work with See Me, we have looked at our sort of renewing our definitions around stigma and discrimination. We used to describe stigma as something that almost like a thought that came into your head, sort of devoid of external influence. And we've really moved to thinking more about structural stigma. And we've also got this intersectional stigma definition there as well. So we think about stigma as a social process that involves the damaging labeling, stereotyping, and exclusion of individuals or groups based on perceived differences that deviate from dominant social norms. And discrimination plays a key part in stigma. We really recognise that mental health stigma and discrimination don't sit on their own. They don't sit in a silo, but actually the stigma and discrimination around mental health actually interacts with other forms of stigma and discrimination as well. So we've used the definition from the work of Sivright et al. To look at how that works. And it is that multiple forms of stigma mutually shape the lived experiences and opportunities of groups who are marginalised and create distinct advantages which cannot be understood in isolation from one another. We know that stigma leads to inequality in diagnoses, treatment, and outcomes, and has really far-reaching impacts on people's lives. And experiences of structural stigma can not only lead to unmet needs, to delayed help seeking or treatment withdrawal, but also things like minority stress, which can really impact on mental health and well-being. So we're thinking specifically around LGBT plus communities and the impacts and some of the nature of the stigma experience. Evidence has found that minority stress is a huge factor in the disproportionately high incidence of mental health problems, not long-term and enduring conditions experienced by LGBT plus people. And as you can see in this next quote, this really places the emphasis not on the identity of being LGBT+, but instead the associated discrimination. And this is again why an intersectional lens is so key to understanding experiences and also really creating action to tackle stigma and discrimination. This is a lovely diagram that was shared as part of a workshop carried out by CAPS Advocacy, which was called Understanding Your MAD History, an Introduction to the Topic of MAD Studies. And it really sort of quite clearly, I think, demonstrates how intersectionality can be used as a tool to really dig deeper and to give a fuller understanding of the systems that really compound people's experiences. I will at this point say that we'll be sharing the slides after the session because I'm going to skip past this quite quickly, and I'm aware it's not enough time to really have a good look at it. So we will share them afterwards so that you can look at it properly. So what works in terms of tackling stigma and discrimination? We know a lot of that comes from community activism, from people coming together at a grassroots level to create change. And our programme within See Me is really based on a lot of what you can see here on the screen just now. And it's also really mirrored in the community champions model, which brings me very nicely on to talking very briefly, because I'm already slightly over time, about the See Me Proud partnership. So I've already mentioned it began in 2017 between See Me and LGBT Health and Wellbeing, and it was based on a community champions model, which Bridie is going to go into a bit more detail about next. It was really about building on the already existing skills and experience and expertise of community members. There's a training and capacity building programme that was developed in partnership between See Me and LGBT Health. And also See Me Proud Champions, some of them did some facilitation training and then actually carried out that training and capacity building programme themselves as well. And over the course of the partnership, there were 23 champions trained. The outcomes were to tackle mental health stigma and discrimination within LGBT plus communities, to reduce the multiple stigma and discrimination experienced by LGBT people more widely within communities and key settings. And the aims were to facilitate a growing movement of change that tackles overall mental health discrimination, to support champions that want to influence change, especially around people's experience of community settings and within health and social care, and to link into See Me's wider social movement, particularly around intersectional issues and capacity building in regards to LGBT plus issues. We'll talk a little bit more detail about how some of the champions went about this work when we speak to Abby and Rose in a little while. But this is just sort of some of the things that I could think of, some of the ways that they actually enacted this work. So things like community engagement, awareness raising, capacity building, a multitude of different types of community events, lots of different creative projects, like just a couple of examples of which were zines, open mics, community cafes, co-production of resources sort of internally within LGBT Health and Wellbeing and CME, but also externally with different organisations as well, partnership working, strategic influencing, and third sector links. Oof, that was very fast talking. I hope everybody could understand that. Apologies if not. That is me for now. I'm going to pass you on to Dr. Bridie Rudd, who is going to talk more about the Community Champions model and about the NHF-led evaluation. So I'll stop my video and pass over to Bridie.
Thanks very much, Anna. Hi, everyone. I am Bridie, and I am the research lead at the Mental Health Foundation for CME. And in the last year or so, I have done the evaluation of the CME Proud partnership. As Anna has mentioned, I'm going to focus in on sort of how we ran this evaluation in the first place, but then look in particular at the findings, focusing on the community champions approach taken within the project. Next slide, please, Anna. So the evaluation was carried out over about a year. It took us quite a long time to do what was effectively a summative evaluation of several years of the partnership. We started off by looking, so getting together as a group and looking at the timeline of key activities and impacts across the length of the project. Once we'd got that kind of longitudinal look at the project, we then focused in on the qualitative analysis of secondary data, particularly project reports and presentations, alongside raw data from earlier evaluations of the individual aspects of the project. We then did some collection and analysis of new primary data, which included interviews with CME Proud champions. And the questions that we were asking within this evaluation were particularly around whether CME Proud achieved its outcomes, specifically around whether it was effective at developing a network of confident and skilled community champions, and did the project help to influence LGBT plus communities thinking about mental health stigma and discrimination. Thanks, Anna. Next slide. So to tackle mental health stigma and discrimination within and experienced by the LGBT plus community, CME Proud adopted a community champions model. The community champions model is a robust framework designed to empower local leaders and community members to drive sustainable development and social change. It focuses on identifying, nurturing and supporting individuals who exhibit the potential to become sort of catalysts for positive transformation within their communities. The model is rooted in the belief that communities are best positioned to understand and address their own needs. And by leveraging the inherent strengths, knowledge and resources within a community, the community champions model aims to create a more sustainable and impactful approach to development. Next slide, please, Anna. So the CME Proud project partnership aimed to create a network of confident, skilled and knowledgeable champions who could then speak openly about their mental health, feel empowered to assert their rights and challenge stigma and discrimination wherever they found it. Next slide, please, Anna. The CME Proud project partnership built on CME's existing social movement community champions program to develop a bespoke package of training and support for the new CME Proud champions. This included bespoke induction training, which was developed in consultation with LGBT plus community members and further adapted in response to feedback by champions. Some of the first cohort of See Me Proud champions received facilitation training and were then supported to help run induction training for further cohorts of champions throughout the project. To facilitate group planning and promote a culture of peer support, regular champions group meetings were held across the project. And it was also supported for the peer for the See Me Proud champions to develop their own peer spaces as well. A flexible and responsive program of ongoing training was offered to all champions based on the identified training needs of the group. Training sessions covered a range of topics such as sharing your voice in the media, social media, project planning, community mapping, and managing disclosures based on the identified training needs of individuals and of the group as a whole. Finally, a See Me Proud development worker was employed to coordinate the project and support the 23 champions trained over the length of the programme. Next slide, please, Anna. So the evaluation of the See Me Proud partnership revealed key impacts of the project. The programme built a network of See Me Proud community champions and who are, as hoped, skilled and knowledgeable in the understanding of mental health stigma and discrimination, and how it also interacts with other forms of stigma and discrimination experienced by LGBT plus communities. This has had many different benefits, including helping some champions to recognise how stigma has impacted upon them. And this is illustrated within the quote on the screen, which I'll just read out. I'd never really addressed the duality of my identities, being LGBT and suffering or living with depression and anxiety. Then being a part of this group has made me realise how they intertwine and how so much of what I experienced has impacted upon my mental health. And that's from one of the See Me Proud champions. Great, thank you, Anna. Throughout the project, See Me Proud champions were able to use their lived experience in a variety of ways, which resulted in several key outcomes for the group. So this included a deep understanding of stigma, discrimination, and intersectionality, as well as how to use their lived experience safely and confidently in a range of different ways, whether it was talking just to one person or to a group, either in a sort of a formal variety or an informal meeting. Over the length of the project, See Me Proud champions volunteered over 1,500 hours of their time to develop and run more than 59 community projects challenging stigma in their communities. And they were able to facilitate conversations and challenge stigma through all of these different methods. Next slide, please, Anna. So See Me Proud was found through this evaluation to make a significant contribution to reducing mental health stigma in Scotland's LGBT plus communities and beyond. The project helped to increase open conversations about mental health, challenge stigma wherever it was found, strengthen inclusive practices in services and policy spaces, and create sustainable anti-stigma resources and partnerships. There is, of course, a lot more detail than this within the evaluation report that is being launched today, but I'm going to leave it there so that you can hear from some of the people who are involved in the project, as their word on the impact is far more important. Thanks, Anna.
Thank you so much, Bridie. Bear with me a second whilst I have to move from slides to video now. This is testing my capabilities. 2 seconds, sorry, I don't know how to get rid of that. Sorry, I can't get under, there we go, okay. So, we've got one See Me Proud champion who has come here today, Rose, who we'll hear from in a little while, and Abby was unfortunately not able to make it, so she very kindly recorded a video interview. So let me play it. Please let me know if you can't hear it, and I'll see if I can change that. So I'll play it just now. Hello, I'm here with Abby, one of the former See Me Proud
Anna, it's now gone. It's now muted.
And so when the opportunity came up to do...
Sorry, 2 seconds. Maybe I need to keep myself unmuted. Okay, apologies for that. Let me just go back 10, 20 seconds. Okay, thank you, Miss.
Hello, I'm here with Abby, one of the former See Me Proud champions, and we're going to chat a little bit about your time with See Me Proud. How are you doing, Abby?
I'm okay. Yeah, I've been working with See Me for quite a long time now, and so when the opportunity came up to do See Me Proud, I was very interested. So yes. Yeah.
So what sort of drew you towards becoming a See Me Proud champion?
I've always been on the edge of the LGBTQ plus community, and it just seemed a good way to get a bit more involved, and also to meet other people who had an interest in the overlap between mental health and that community. And it was also about being older and choosing to embed that part of my identity more publicly, because I think one of the problems that my generation faces is that an awful lot of it has been underground for so long. So it was an opportunity to sort of be a bit more open about it.
In your time with See Me Proud and also with See Me, you've done so many interesting bits of work, really sort of interesting creative work. I'm thinking of, you know, your scenes with young people, but also your graph. In terms of all the work that you've done with See Me Proud, what do you think your favourite piece of work is that you did whilst you were a champion?
There was more than one.
Oh, good.
There was the graphic novel and the zines for teens, although only one of the zines for teens was specific to LGBT, and that was the one called Out, which was very popular, in fact. So that was great fun. I loved doing that, and I loved working with the young woman, I can't remember her name, community champion, who I was working with for that. And then there was the LGBT age puppet workshop. That was also that was an awful lot of work, but it was really good fun, and it was really interesting to see what people create, you know, because you never know when you do those workshops, any kind of workshop, what someone else is going to turn out, you know, what the end product for them is going to be. So yeah. Also how they used puppets to tell a story, that was really interesting, especially when they had very little previous experience. It's almost like you're seeing them find another part of themselves when they use a puppet, because of that, just because of the way puppets are, that there's something outside of yourself that you can use as part of yourself. And then on the other side, on the receiving end, Sophie did a really interesting collage workshop that I went to, and I really enjoyed that because I just find collages really interesting as a medium. You know, for me, I always just sit there and cut pictures out and then get a stack of them and then decide what I'm going to do and how I'm going to put them together. And I always found that really powerful. So yeah, it was good.
Yeah. So some really interesting things are around using creativity as a way of exploring identity, exploring, I guess, mental health stigma discrimination, but also the overlapping, like, intersectional stigmas and things as well. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, puppets are just brilliant for that anyway. I've always felt that it's like creating a third person in a room, because you've got yourself with the puppet and then you've got your audience, and what you do is the puppet communicates with the audience, you don't. So you're able to explore things like identity and stigma and do that through the puppet. So it can be really personal, but because the puppet's doing it, you're kind of one step away from it. That can be very effective. So yeah. Distance, and that's safe. Yeah. To explore. Amazing. Thinking about your time as a champion, And I think throughout the rest of the session today, we're going to talk a bit more about some of the challenges around doing the work. So I wonder if there's anything that comes up for you around the challenges that See Me Proud champions faced when they were trying to carry out the anti-stigma work.
I think they're very individual. The challenges are very much sort of from what individual people's life experiences are. And I mean, again, that goes back to what I said earlier about my life experience as an older person is very, very different from the experiences of much younger people. But again, because of both mental health and LGBTQ being hidden. I mean, when I remember going for my first therapy sessions at about the age of 17, it was never spoken about. It wasn't spoken about at home or at school or with anybody. It was completely hidden. And I think when you start from there, it does make it very difficult to get through that barrier and say, well, actually, yes, it was like that. It's always been like that. And I think that's very similar to what a lot of people in the LGBTQ plus community experience as well, that a lot of their choices were always hidden. Whereas now it's much easier to be very public about it and to enjoy it as well. I think that, some of us, I'm reading from notes here, some of us will have dealt with enforced invisibility and outspoken prejudice. And I think both of those have a dramatic impact on how you live your life. And that impact will affect what happens when you try to be public and communicate with other people about where you've come from and what's important to you. So yeah,
absolutely. Thank you for that, Abby. That was really eloquently put. I guess thinking more broadly about your time with See Me Proud, what sort of impacts do you think it's had on you in terms of confidence? I just feel visible in a much more positive way. And so, yes, definitely more confident, more outspoken probably as well. Yeah, and met some very interesting people during that time. And there has, I think, going to the Comic-Cons with the graphic novel and the zines and the puppet, we took one of the puppets with every time. I think for me, I felt like I was beginning to find my own community, the sort of alternative creative community. So, yeah, and that's come from doing the See Me Proud work. And in fact, there's a very recent update because it's only just been decided, but I'm helping to set up a Games and Geeks group locally to home. And again, it's going to involve people from the community who aren't comfortable in what you might call normal situations. They're people who like anime and comics and role playing and So yeah, I think it's made quite a big difference to how I'm going forward. Definitely. That's brilliant. Well, the programme and See Me generally has benefited so much from all of your input as well, Abby. So thank you so much for your involvement with See Me Proud.
Hopefully everybody could hear that as well as see it. I'm going to come out of the video now. Thanks so much to Abby for her input. I think really clearly, not only did she talk about some of the sort of intersectional stigma that she experienced, but also those impacts and thinking about things like community building came through so strongly, I think, from her time with See Me Proud as well. I'm going to pass you over now to Grant Aitchison from LGBT Health and Wellbeing. I'll get your slides up, Grant. And he's going to talk about the impact of the work within LGBT Health and Wellbeing. Let me see if we go. Here we go. Thanks, Grant.
Thanks, Anna. Hi, everyone. Yeah, my name's Grant. I'm the service manager for LGBT Health and Wellbeing. I'm just going to spend a quick 5 minutes or so touching on some of the things that our organisation did and discovered and learned throughout the partnership, rather than the work of the champions Abby's described it so eloquently, all the sort of benefits and the work that they've done. And Rose is going to speak after me, who is another one of the champions. So a quick recap on our services for anyone who's not heard of us before. Can I get the next slide, please? Sorry. So we do a range of support and wellbeing services for LGBTQ people in Scotland aged 16 and over. I've listed them on this slide here. We've got a helpline, a counselling service, one-to-one support work. So that's more flexible, emotional and practical support that people can access at any stage, just to talk about things that are on their mind, talk about either to do with their identity and sexuality or just general mental health and wellbeing. We can do lots of signposting and referring and things like that into other services as well. We do mental health workshops, which can include things like collaging and things working with clay that Abby mentioned. We find that people maybe don't want to talk about their mental health or don't want to come to a mental health support group, but that they would come along to a puppet workshop or a collaging workshop and then hopefully feel comfortable sharing things that have been on their mind, things that have been troubling them, and getting a little bit of peer support, but also sort of facilitated support as well. We do information sessions on mental health and sort of integrating into the community. We do social and community groups. So a lot of the LGBT places to go are very centered around like alcohol and drugs and dancing. There's people who are maybe neurodivergent or for religious reasons aren't don't drink alcohol, or people who are sober or sober curious, and they don't find those spaces particularly helpful for making connections and relationships. So we offer social groups and community groups for that. And then we offer targeted support, again, like Abby was saying, for people aged 60 plus, for asylum seekers and refugees, and for trans people, just to combat some of the intersectional issues that Anna referenced at the beginning. Next slide, please, Anna. What we did, I'll quickly run through this, but we introduced a champion lead first and foremost. So for the first 3 years of the project, that was Jean, and then it was taken over by Sophie in 2021. It was really important to have a dedicated person there to sort of champion the work and push the work forward, and to support the project and the champions with the work that they were doing, so they knew they had a dedicated person to speak to. It was just 7 hours a week over the last 4 years of the project. So it was an additional onto somebody's 4 days a week. We increased them to 5 so that they could dedicate a full day to doing these important work. We recruited volunteer champions. There was 23 throughout the 7 years that were in a sort of 10 at the beginning and then 12 halfway through. We did some of the training that Anna mentioned around LGBT issues, but also mental health, intersectionality, how to work in a trauma-informed way, and how to sort of open up about how you're feeling in a sort of safe and guarded way. We didn't want people to be sort of coming with lots of trauma and spilling that all out and not being able to sort of leave the space in a mentally healthy place. So it was important that we introduced boundaries and resilience and just being mindful of what people were disclosing and how they're sharing those safely. Can I get the last slide again? Sorry, I'll just quickly run through it. We incorporated anti-stigma into internal and external delivery. So we made sure that when we were going out and doing talks and presentations that we always took a sort of anti-discrimination and anti-stigma approach when we were talking to people. We co-produced external materials, so there was some zines that Abby was mentioning. We also had the community champions contribute to our manual for me, which is a mental health sort of mental health intervention workbook that people can work through when they're feeling close to suicide. And yeah, we supported the champions to share their experience safely. Next slide now, thanks, Anna. And what we introduced as an organisation, sort of from the learnings from the champions, was annual staff time to talk days, which was like 90 minutes to 2 hours, where the staff could get together and just talk about how they were feeling. It wasn't mandatory, it was just for people who felt it would be beneficial, and that really helped people be more open and honest about the sort of challenges they were facing. It didn't need to be work-related challenges, but it could be to do with capacity or demands on their time and things like that as well. We added anti-stigma and discrimination as a sort of standing agenda item onto team meetings and updates and things like that, which helped us just make sure that we were always being mindful of the ways that we were working. We set up a wellbeing at work group for the staff team. So that did like days out, it did sort of newsletters that had self-help resources in it. We introduced a new EAP that was better fitted to the team. And we just made sure that all the managers and supervisors were including sort of check-ins at the start of SNS, support and supervision sessions. We used the champions' lived experience when we were reviewing certain policies around sort of mental health, stress, wellbeing policies, which was really beneficial for the staff team. But what really worked was the champions attending sort of the social spaces and workshops and the events that the team were running, where there was maybe particularly, for example, using asylum seekers as an example, the champions going along and talking to them and breaking down some of the stigma for people who are traditionally less likely to talk about their mental health and well-being. So that was one of the things we found was really the most beneficial from the project over the last few years. Next slide, please, Anna. And what we saw and learned, people felt more comfortable open up about their mental health once they knew that it was a safe space to do so. So some of the groups were very mental health focused, as I said, but other groups were more social. They were around like reading groups or walking groups, but it was important that people still felt able to talk about their mental health there. And people knew that if they disclosed something that they were going to get supported instead of people shutting down. So sometimes it's just more easy to talk to a volunteer than a staff member. Attendees felt more comfortable accessing individual support after talking to a champion. They could talk through how normal it was to access like our counselling service or our helpline and just help reassure people. People felt less guilt about having to cancel sessions, so people were re-engaging more after they'd missed a session because they didn't have that sort of shame or guilt around having to cancel a session, which was really good. What we learned as the sort of organisation was the importance of the champion lead worker. As I said, it's so important that they've got dedicated time to take that forward. The importance of targeting specific communities, for example, asylum seekers. The challenges of getting into certain sectors. We had hoped to go into a lot more sort of health and social care settings to talk about sort of the stigma of mental health, but between COVID and then just sort of the NHS's capacity, that was a more challenging thing for us to be able to do. And I would say one of the main things is being aware of the mental well-being of the champions. Obviously, you're recruiting people with lived experience of mental health, and it's important that you're supporting them adequately. And if they're not burning out or they're not being put in situations where they're talking to people about mental health all the time without any sort of support for themselves. So those were the things that we found over the course of the 7 years. But hopefully Rose can give you more of an insight into the work that they did. Thanks, Anna.
Thank you so much, Grant, and apologies there for being a little bit over enthusiastic with my slide sharing jumping.
Nice.
I'm going to come out of screen sharing just now, and I'm going to pass over to Rose and say welcome, Rose. Thank you so much for coming along today.
Okay, thanks very much, Anna. Yeah, my name is Rose, and I see we're running almost exactly on time, so I'll try and fit this in. I'm not famous for being short. Okay, as I said, I was a former community champion, and I got involved because I have lived experience of mental well-being issues. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder in 2008, although I'd been in the mental health network for over 20 years. I know like labels can be difficult, but somebody talked about reclaiming labels, and like being diagnosed helped me find out what it was about. So anyway, I'm reading from notes as well. a couple of things. The first thing I was involved with after the training, which I found very helpful because I learned a lot, and I learned a lot about CME as well, was an open mic, a spoken word open mic. And we held that in Govan Hill. I found a community cafe that was a safe and supportive environment, a welcoming environment. They could accommodate us in the evening and provided teas and coffees and things like that. So it was a nice space. I've got pretty good organisational skills, and I was able to use them to promote the event with the help of CME and bring people together. I've been doing this for many years. I like bringing people together in a safe, a community environment, and then letting them kind of bounce off each other, but taking a bit of a back seat myself. So we got it promoted, found a space, got some audio equipment, and had it one night, and it was a lovely, lovely space. It brought people together that had seen it on the notices or the posters that I put up in Govan Hill in various shops and things like that, community centres. And yeah, it was a nice evening because people came along and we had kind of listed people who were going to talk, but also it encouraged people who were sitting there just to come out and share their experience, either lived experience of mental health conditions or their experience with stigma and discrimination. So although it was kind of structured, there was also the opportunity for people to have one-to-one chats during breaks. It also gave people the opportunity to hear about CME's experience, CME, and a bit more. There were people there that were just out of interest. There was one man that passed and he saw the lights and he came in and he got up at one point and I said, "Oh, are you leaving?" He said, "No, I'm going across to get my guitar. I've thought of something that I can play." And I just thought that was fantastic. It was just on the spot. He saw the light, he came in. And I mean, there's all kinds of things that come out of spaces, you know, things that you learn or you hear. People did poetry. Somebody shared their experience of being sectioned and taken into hospital. And the stigma and discrimination that you can feel in mental health situations as well. But overall, it can be a good experience going into hospital. I have personal experience of that myself. But it was a lovely space. It was a good night. And I know the legacy of that is that the open mics, the spoken open mics, are continuing within CME. So there's a bit of a legacy there as well. How are we doing for time? Okay. So one of the best things about the open mic was allowing people to be creative. There were people who came along with poems. They had written a lot of poetry. One woman stood up, came out of at the end and talked about grief and the impact of grief on her mental well-being. And she read a poem that she had prepared for her father's funeral. And I just thought that was lovely, you know. So it was a really good night. And as I said, it's been continued on. And so that was the first thing that I was involved in. I also did a zine with my late partner, and we made a zine on mindfulness. And I feel that mindfulness is a great tool that I use, a wellbeing tool, and it can increase people's confidence, resilience, and that's been archived now in Govan Hill in the zine library for posterity. It was more an introduction, just a little zine, but we made it from scratch at one of the workshops at LGBT Health and Wellbeing at Time to Talk weekend, and it's now sort of archived, so that's nice. And one of the other things I was involved with was the conversation cafes or the community cafes. We did this also in Govan Hill, so as a community event, brought people together. Again, we had people who just saw something happening and came in. we had a good chat about people's lived experience. I feel these things help people to identify what stigma they've experienced and discrimination. I learned a lot about my own self-stigma through being involved as a champion, and indirect discrimination I suffered. Abby talked about being an older person. I didn't come out until I was in my 30s because of stigma and discrimination. I sat, and that definitely had an impact on my mental health. So with people that are coming along to either to the open mics or the community chats and things like that, people realise that they're not alone. It must be a lot easier for young people now because it's, you know, so Abby talked about it not being spoken about, not having role models and things like that. That's completely changed. So making people be seen as well. Somebody talked about hidden, making people just feel part of a community. And I felt that the things that I got out of it was learning a lot about myself, but other people, peer support, talking to people about coping skills, what worked for them, what didn't, and giving something back to the community, not just the LGBT or queer community. That's a label that's been reclaimed, and I tend to use that rather than LGBT plus. And yeah, it was a great experience, and I do miss it, but I've stayed on as a CME volunteer, although I haven't done much in the last year. As I said, my partner passed away in 2024, and I did have a period of grief and also a spell in hospital because of that. I had a breakdown. So the things are good now. 2026 has started off well. So yeah, that's me. I'm going to finish now.
Thank you so much for that, Rose. It was such a great insight into like the work that you carried out as a champion, but also like so impactful hearing the impact on you as well in terms of what you got out of that. So thank you so much for sharing, and thank you so much for coming along today. We are going to move into breakout rooms now. I think we can do about 8 minutes of breakout rooms. So I'm aware it's not a huge amount of time, but hopefully it gives folk enough time just to chat through one brief question, which is, what are your key takeaways from today? Anna, the tech wizard, is going to sort us out into breakout rooms. There will be a CME or an LGBT Health or an MHF facilitator as part of that room, so they'll introduce themselves. And yeah, hopefully we can just have a bit of a chat, and then we'll come back just for a minute or two before saying goodbye. We'll stop the recording as well because we won't record the breakout rooms.